Penguin fans need to sell a home or buy one? Go with the top producing team in the nation, the Amy Wenger team with eXp Realty. Serving Northeast Ohio for 28 years, experience real estate that achieves your goals and exceeds your expectations. Call today and tell them you subscribe to the Penguin Nation Fans podcast, and they will ensure that you are treated like family. Call 330-681-6090 or visit amysguarantee.com. Go Guins. All right, welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Penguin Nation Fans podcast. As always, I am your host, Gino Leone. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Whitetown Nation. And don't forget to check out my written work over on Redshirt Sports. Today, we're breaking down my 2026 Missouri Valley Football Conference preseason power rankings. I went through the entire conference schedule, every individual team schedule, and gave you guys the team's overall record, conference record, and who I think wins the Missouri Valley Football Conference. I already published this article over on Redshirt Sports with North Dakota State leaving the conference for the Mountain West. That leaves the door wide open for the rest of the conference to compete and try to go claim that conference title. Obviously, South Dakota State has been super consistent. South Dakota has been consistent as of late. Who else emerges? There's teams like Youngstown State, North Dakota, Illinois State, Southern Illinois that are all trying to vie for this conference title. Will they be able to do so? I'm going to break down number 9 through number 1 of my preseason power rankings, how I predicted the entire schedule, and just give you guys my honest analysis on each team heading into the 2026 campaign. This might be viewed as a bit of a hot take with who I picked to win the conference, but I do think the depth of this conference is real. I think although South Dakota State is the preseason favorite to win this conference, I think North Dakota, Youngstown State, and Southern Illinois are all ready to take that next step forward and compete for this conference throne. And I think those teams made some serious improvements this offseason. So let's get into it. First, starting at number 9 with Murray State. Murray State has struggled since joining the conference. They have won just 2 Missouri Valley Football Conference games over the past 3 seasons. It's been a struggle under head coach Jody Wright. My predicted record for them is 1-11 and 0-8 in conference play. Their only projected win for me comes against Valparaiso. I just think if Murray State wants to take a step forward, they need to start winning games like the game they have against Eastern Illinois and Northern Iowa. And until they prove they can do so, I'm going to pick this team to finish at the bottom of the conference. I just don't think they're in a great position right now. They've struggled since joining the conference. They might have joined the conference at the wrong time. And they're sort of stuck in this rebuilding mode. And in a conference that is as talented as the Missouri Valley, you cannot afford to be rebuilding year in and year out. And I just think the discrepancy between the bottom 3 teams of this conference and the top 6 teams of this conference is massive. There's a huge gap separating these bottom 3 teams. And honestly, you could make the argument that there's a gap between Murray State and Indiana State and Northern Iowa. And I know Murray State was able to beat Indiana State last season, but they're still the bottom dwelling team in the conference. And until they prove that they can rise to the occasion and sort of push their way up the conference standings, this is a team that preseason deserves to be put last in the conference, and they need to prove it on the field that they're worthy of being picked higher in the conference. Next up, we have number 8, Indiana State. My predicted record for them is 3-9 and 1-7 in Missouri Valley Football Conference play. I'm sort of intrigued to see how their season goes as they get back star quarterback Elijah Owens. He was a former Jerry Rice Award finalist, and I think that gives them some momentum heading into the season. He looked great in the limited action he had last season, but he had that season-ending injury against Eastern Illinois that sort of killed their offensive production. I thought Owens last season, he was going to take a big step forward in his development. Instead, has that massive injury, has that setback. How does he respond to that injury? Some players, when they get injured, it sort of alters their career path. It alters their trajectory. Can Owens change that and give Indiana State some optimism? And then on their schedule for Indiana State, SEMO and Northern Iowa are huge swing games. If you win both of those games, this is a team that could push for that 500 mark and maybe surprise some people in this conference. They have some nice returning talent. Kurt Mallory is back as the head coach. I still think they're a year away from competing with the conference's top half, and it can't be an easy place to win at Indiana State. So they're going to have to prove it on the field, but this might be a sneaky team that could pop up on some teams and make some noise. They upset South Dakota State last season. Maybe that gives them some momentum heading into 2026. Next up at number 7, I have Northern Iowa. The projected record I have for them is 3-8, and then 2-6 in Missouri Valley Football Conference play. Todd Stepsis enters his second season as the head coach of the Panthers. I like Coach Stepsis. I thought he did an excellent job with the Drake Bulldogs and getting that program back to being a consistent playoff contender. The opener for Northern Iowa against Eastern Washington will tell us a lot. They have to go on the road to Eastern Washington. That's a brutal environment to play at. I still think this is a Northern Iowa team that is rebuilding after several difficult seasons, and I think it's going to take time for Coach Stepsis to get this program to where he wants it to go. This is a program that is still sort of adjusting and adapting to the modern era of college football, and I'm not going to give this program the benefit of the doubt because of their brand, because they haven't proven that they can compete in this new era of college football. They're not the team that they were under Mark Farley several years ago, right? I'm not going to benefit them for their brand and their consistency in the past. They need to earn it under a new head coach and prove that this is a team that can push into that middle tier, second tier of the Missouri Valley Football Conference. Let's move on now to one of the more exciting parts of this conference, the conference race, the race for the conference title, one of the deepest conferences in the country. This race is going to be incredible. When I was going through this, it was so difficult to preseason rank these teams because there's so much talent, returning production coming back in this conference, and I think that makes it tough to tell who's going to win this conference. And again, I talked about South Dakota State, preseason favorite to win the conference, but they have a new head coach in Dan Jackson. He enters his second season with the program. They still have to prove that they can live up to the South Dakota State standard, and I think the balance in this conference is really going to show this season. At number 6, this may come as a surprise to some people, but really, if you just look at this roster, this season's team, and accept that this is a different team than the team we saw in the postseason, Illinois State at number 6 makes sense in this conference when projecting ahead and predicting the record. I have Illinois State finishing at 8-4 and then 4-4 in the Missouri Valley Football Conference. They were the national runner-up last season, but Illinois State loses Tommy Rittenhouse and Daniel Sopkowitz. Those two were huge in that postseason run that Illinois State had. Rittenhouse and Sopkowitz made it happen in some critical downs, and I just don't think that Illinois State is going to find a replacement for either Sopkowitz or Rittenhouse. And I'm not saying the new starting quarterback for Illinois State has to be an absolute gamer, but it doesn't help. Look, I know Dylan Lord is back. I know Luke Maylander is back at receiver. Those two give you a solid foundation to build upon at wide receiver, but Sopkowitz was sort of that bigger framed, bigger body type receiver, a guy that you could throw it up to in critical situations, and he's going to come down with a contested catch. I'm not sure that Lord or Maylander offer that type of size, or any of the transfers that they brought in offer that type of versatility. But still, this is a talented team. Their linebacking corps is loaded, anchored by Ty Niekamp, phenomenal middle linebacker, probably the best linebacker in the FCS. They have to replace their defensive line. That defensive line was crucial in that postseason run. Can they find guys that can step in and rise to the occasion? They certainly have the talent to make a push for the conference title. They return a lot of experience on their offensive line. Running back Victor Dawson, who Illinois State really leaned on in the postseason, is back. That gives them a solid foundation for their new quarterback that they're breaking in. But I just think replacing Rittenhouse, Sopkowitz, left tackle Jake Pope, and then the entire starting defensive line, that's going to be a tall task for experienced coach Brock Spack. So Northern Illinois is a sneaky, intriguing FBS matchup. I picked Illinois State to beat them. I frankly just don't have much respect for the MAC as a conference, and I think Illinois State is more than talented enough where their offensive line is going to be able to get some penetration. They're going to be able to run the ball, and whoever starts at quarterback for Illinois State just needs to be a good game manager and distribute the ball to his speedy playmakers in Dylan Lord and Luke Maylander. This closing stretch here is brutal for Illinois State, and that's why I have them at 4-4 in the conference. Illinois State has to play North Dakota, Youngstown State, and South Dakota. That's a tough closing stretch. I'm going to talk about how I think South Dakota is going to get better as the year progresses. This is still a playoff caliber football team. I'd be really intrigued to see if Illinois State would get in at 8-4 with an FBS win and a couple of standout conference wins. We'll have to see. I would think they would be in, but you never know as they have a non-Division I opponent to open up the season. At number 5, I have South Dakota. The projected record here I have for them is 7-5, but 5-3 in the Missouri Valley Football Conference, giving them a slight advantage over Illinois State heading into the season. This is a program that had massive offseason turnover. New head coach, new quarterback, 5 of 6 top offensive linemen are gone. That's a lot of production to replace, and I feel like this might be the year where some of the turnover that this program has had finally catches up to them, because this has been a program that has been super consistent, a team that has been in the quarterfinals consistently, has established itself as a premier program in the Missouri Valley Football Conference, but that's a lot of turnover, and I feel like Aiden Bauman at quarterback doesn't get enough credit for how he sort of stabilized that program and allowed that program to remain steady despite coaching changes, roster turnover. Last season, right? They replaced so much on that offensive line. It was really a new look team once again under Travis Johansson, and Aiden Bauman just responded. They started off slow, but he was so experienced. He did such a good job of not turning the ball over, not making mistakes. I just think that veteran presence is going to be felt this season. Plus, you have to replace a ton on the offensive line again. You have to replace a ton at wide receiver. I just think it's going to take time for this team to mesh and gel together, and that's why I have them getting upset by Northern Colorado early in the season. This is still a talented team. Their running back room is absolutely loaded with Charles Pierre Jr. coming back and then Keandre Jones-Logan back. Quality defensive pieces, a strong linebacking corps. I think their defense is going to be solid, but I just think a tough road schedule keeps them just outside of my top 4, and I think this is a program that has a lot of questions to answer, and I know people want to say they should get the benefit of the doubt for what they've done in the past. I really don't think it's a valid argument to look back at the past for a program like South Dakota that honestly has not been on the same level as South Dakota State or North Dakota State and give them the benefit of the doubt. Very rarely when I'm going through preseason power rankings am I going to give a program that's not North Dakota State, South Dakota State, Montana State, or some of those premier FCS programs the benefit of the doubt for what they've done in the past. I just talked about Illinois State. They had that magical run to the postseason. That's a program that has not been able to get to the national championship game that consistently. So why should I give them the benefit of the doubt for something that they did last season? It's a new season. It's a new year. Every team in the conference is new. I'm not going to praise you for what you did last season. You have to earn it on the field this season. And I was low last offseason on South Dakota. I remember they were preseason ranked at a lot of top 3s. And I said that was a team that was going to go 8-4 and they were going to struggle early. And that's exactly what they did. At 7-5 and 5-3 in the Missouri Valley, I would be super interested to see if South Dakota got put in the playoffs, I think it would be very difficult for this conference to get 6 teams in the playoffs. But it would be interesting because Illinois State would be behind South Dakota in the rankings, but South Dakota wouldn't have an FBS win over Northern Illinois, so I'm not sure how that would work, what that argument would look like. It would certainly be interesting, but South Dakota, nonetheless, I have at the number 5 slot in my preseason power rankings. Number 4, I have Southern Illinois. I have their projected record at 8-4 and 5-3 in the Missouri Valley Football Conference. I think this team is being severely underrated this preseason. This is one of the league's best offenses. DJ Williams returns at quarterback. Excellent running back tandem. Excellent offensive line. The biggest question for them is going to be defense, and can they see drastic improvement on defense? Their run defense last season was just atrocious, and a lot of that had to do with their defensive line not getting penetration. I remember when Southern Illinois came to the Ice Castle last season, YSU's offensive line generated a lot of penetration against that team, and I have a hard time believing with some of the transfers they brought in, some of the size that they brought in, that Southern Illinois' run defense can be worse than it was last season. I think we can only go up. If you're Southern Illinois, you can only go up in terms of run defense and having a defensive line that can generate penetration. A standout transfer class is super intriguing for them. And again, I think this is a team that is being underrated preseason. I think their offense is going to be electric with DJ Williams. Their running backs are phenomenal. They're going to be able to establish a strong running attack. I thought they reloaded well at wide receiver this offseason. And this is a team that I think is going to have a successful year. The biggest and most season-defining stretch for Southern Illinois is this 3-game stretch against Youngstown State, South Dakota, and Illinois State. How Southern Illinois performs in that stretch could determine if this team emerges as a legit conference title contender or as somebody that barely makes the playoffs, sort of on that playoff bubble, and falls to 8-4 and 5-3 in the conference. Number 3, I have South Dakota State. This might be viewed as a hot take, but again, I'm projecting ahead. I've talked about how balanced this conference is, and I have a predicted record for South Dakota State at 9-3 and 6-2 in the Missouri Valley Football Conference. Quarterback Chase Mason, unbelievable. If he has a breakthrough season, there's a chance he gets drafted in the spring. 4 returning starters on the offensive line. New look secondary, I think, is going to get tested immediately. And the big early conference game on the schedule is against Youngstown State. I have Youngstown State defeating South Dakota State, and that might be viewed as a hot take. I know it's tough for Youngstown State to go on the road to Brookings and pull off an upset win on the road at night, but I just think with a new look secondary, South Dakota State's going to be figuring some things out in that secondary. And I promise you, with the receivers that YSU brought in through the portal, you do not want to be figuring things out in the secondary against Youngstown State. You better have answers heading into that game in the secondary, or YSU and Bo Brungard are going to pick you apart in the passing attack. And I think YSU has 6 guys that could all go in at receiver and make a significant impact and maybe expose the secondary a bit. And now on the flip side, South Dakota State is loaded on offense, right? They return a lot at receiver. I know it was a super competitive game at Stambaugh Stadium last season when South Dakota State beat Youngstown State on the road despite trailing 17-7 at halftime. But this is a new look defense for YSU. It's a 3-4 defense. Ryan Remigio is the new defensive coordinator, and I really think the national media is underselling how big of an impact he's going to have. This is going to be the first time South Dakota State sees Coach Remigio's defense at YSU, and I know Mercyhurst played South Dakota State last season. It's a bit different, right? Because Ryan Remigio is implementing some different things here with YSU. He has much greater talent here with Youngstown State. And I just think that at this point in the season, this could be when Youngstown State's defense starts to gel together with that 3-4 defense. And I think we have the front 7 to stop the run and sort of impact how this offense for South Dakota State performs. So I think Youngstown State gets the W against South Dakota State. This is still one of the conference's elite teams, but I also think this is one of the more vulnerable South Dakota State teams we have seen than in the past. Dan Jackson's second season. How does that look for them? I think going on the road to North Dakota is a brutal game for South Dakota State. So I have them picked at number 3 in the conference. And you got to take risk in these preseason projections or else it's not that fun. So we're going to put the Jackrabbits at number 3 in the conference. And I honestly wouldn't be surprised if this South Dakota State team wins the conference, if they finish second. It wouldn't surprise me if they upset Northwestern early in the season. That's how talented this team is and how much production they bring back. But I just think that it's time for some of these other teams to emerge. Number 2, I have North Dakota. Predicted record for them is 9-3 and 6-2 in the Missouri Valley Football Conference. I love Eric Schmidt, second season head coach for North Dakota. I think he's one of the better defensive minds in the FCS. What he schemed up on defense against Youngstown State last season was just phenomenal. And this was a team last season that was super close to having a completely different season complexion if they win some of those close games. They had a lot of close losses against some elite competition. Kansas State, Montana, North Dakota State, right? These were close losses that if Eric Schmidt and his staff were able to get that team to win and rally, I mean, that's a completely different season and a team that's potentially pushing for a top 8 seed in the FCS postseason. This is a strong offensive line. Jerry Kaminsky comes back at quarterback. I think he's going to take a significant step forward in his second season as a starting quarterback. And I know that there are sort of mixed opinions on Jerry Kaminsky as a quarterback. I've never really understood that. Like, for me, last season, I thought Jerry Kaminsky was phenomenal. He was a first-year starter, right? Very rarely are you going to plug in a first-year starter at a program like North Dakota and they're just going to absolutely ball out and be perfect. No, there's going to be mistakes. There's going to be things that he has to improve upon, and he certainly has to get better at cutting down his turnovers and improving his completion percentage. But I think that's just a natural progression that we'll see from a quarterback like Jerry Kaminsky. Bo Brungard in 2024, his first season as the starter for Youngstown State, he wasn't perfect as a quarterback. I don't think we should say the same. Like, Jerry Kaminsky is going to improve. He's going to take a step forward. And I really don't understand the negativity surrounding him heading into the season. They have a solid core of talent around him. That offensive line is phenomenal. I think Kaminsky is being underrated heading into the season. And then on top of that, North Dakota has just an outstanding pass rush with that lethal edge rushing duo of Lance Rucker and Caden Vig. Home games against Illinois State and Southern Illinois are huge. The opening schedule here for North Dakota is massive as it allows them to gain a lot of momentum heading into conference play. They get South Dakota State at home, which I think is a game they're going to be successful in. Road trips to South Dakota and Youngstown State ultimately keep North Dakota from winning the conference in my projections. But again, it honestly would not surprise me at all if this North Dakota team splits that trip to South Dakota and Youngstown State and ends up winning the conference because of some of the victories they picked up on the road. Number 1, your Missouri Valley Football Conference champion, I have Youngstown State at 9-2 and 7-1 in the Missouri Valley. The Penguins bring back the Walter Payton Award-winning quarterback in Bo Brungard. They return the best offensive line in the Missouri Valley, one of the better offensive lines in the entire country. Ryan Remedio takes over on defense, and I feel like a lot of people, again, are not talking enough about how good of a hire this is. This is a coach that has seen what it looks like to be elite at all 3 levels of the defense. He has a consistent track record of scheming up a pass defense, which has been a major weakness for Youngstown State in the Doug Phillips era under several different defensive coordinators. Last season was John Hanline. I think we're going to see Ryan Remedio get this defense to where it needs to be. We're going to take a significant step forward. We're going to see a much more disciplined unit, and we return a lot on the front 7. There's a lot of continuity coming back, a lot of veteran pieces. Mike Wells is an anchor for us on that defense. Our defensive line is one of the more underrated units in the entire Missouri Valley, maybe even the entire country. I really do think this is a defense that's going to take a massive step forward, and you couple that with an offense that is going to be absolutely electric with some of the pieces we have coming back and what we were able to do through the portal at the wide receiver position. This is a team, man, that its ceiling is to make a run in a push for Nashville. Home games against South Dakota, North Dakota, and Illinois State are enormous. That's such a good layout, such a good schedule layout for Youngstown State. You want to have those home games against teams that play in domes like South Dakota and North Dakota. The biggest game on this schedule is that South Dakota State game. If the Penguins win that one, that opens the floodgates for this team to have a massive season and to go and capture that Missouri Valley Football Conference title. And again, I feel like between South Dakota State, North Dakota, and Youngstown State, any one of those teams could win the conference. And I'm not counting out Southern Illinois, Illinois State, or South Dakota, but I do think they have some more questions to answer for. And I think Youngstown State is going to get it done this season. I thought last year was a massive step forward for the Penguins, and I feel like we have a lot coming back and a lot of unfinished business to take care of after some close losses to the Dakota schools last year and that crushing defeat against Yale in the postseason. So that's going to do it for this edition of the Penguin Nation Fans Podcast. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Make sure to leave the show a 5-star review and continue to support the podcast on social media. For now, I'm Gino Leone, and as always, go Guins.